Hey friends, it's Candace at Beacon Hill Books. I'm here today with the Mid-Year Freakout Tag. I was tagged by two of my favorite booktubers, one which is Jess at Garden Scriptorium, the woman, the legend, everybody knows Jess, and Cheryl at CR Flames Fan. She's fairly new, but we have very similar taste, I think, in reading, so thanks, guys. Let's just get started. So, the first question is best book read this year so far. The Peabody Sisters by Megan Marshall. This book was amazing. I learned so much. I was just blown away that I really had never heard of any of the Peabody Sisters, really, and how much they influenced so much of our history. I mean, it looks large, but it is 120 pages of just notes alone that Megan Marshall writes about certain things she wrote in the book. And it's stuff that you could actually read. I haven't, but it's not just like a notation. It's like it goes into more detail. It's unbelievable. And the amount of work that she put into this, I think she got a grant, but it took her 20 years to write this book. She went through and tried to read everything that the three sisters wrote, and then anything that they really got their hands on or even read. And I really enjoyed it. I posted this to my Instagram. This is a picture of one of their letters where they would write on both ways to conserve paper and postage money, and she said she found some of the best nuggets and gems in these little end parts at the end, so they became to be very crucial. She got to know every one of their handwritings. It says, I remained fascinated with the years when the sisters were starting out in life, when American romanticism was born of a widespread yearning for spiritual and intellectual transcendence. And certain women and men of Boston and Concord, the Peabody sisters among them, banded together to create what was then called, quote, the newness, the movement that startled our young nation into a vibrant maturity. These were the years when Elizabeth, Mary, and Sophia Peabody grew up and fell in love with books, art, ideas, and men. So good. So good. The second question, which is the best sequel this year, and I was going to pick it as one of the ties for the best books of the year, was Assassin's Fate by Robin Hobb. That was the third book in the Fits in the Fool trilogy. Guys, I just love all of those books. I just don't know how she did it. That's just what I want to say, because the triangle of the characters between Fitz, the Fool, and Bee, it's my favorite collection of characters and how they're all related, connected, dependent, the dreaming, the dragons, the everything. I just love it all. New release I haven't read yet, but I want to. I would say that's Golden Hill by Frances Spufford. Both Jess and Mel, they read the shortlist for the Walter Scott Prize. They both really, really loved that book, and listening to both of them, I think that would be my favorite, all of them. I would have said The Shadowland by Elizabeth Kostova, but Insert Literary Pun didn't really love it, so that was disappointing. I'm still going to read it. I'm on hold at the library for it, but that was one I was really looking forward to. Number 4, most anticipated release for second half of the year. I mentioned this in one of my top 5 videos that I was doing a little bit ago. I guess I'd say Sourdough by Robin Sloan. I really like Robin Sloan. I think he's one of the quirkier writers I've read, and I really, really like his email list. He doesn't bombard you, but when he does email you, it's super interesting. And I like how he combines technology, but also like secret, well, at least in his last book, Mr. Penumbra's 24-Hour Bookstore, he had combined kind of typography, with societies. Like, those are all things that I really like and enjoy. So my biggest disappointment was Lincoln and the Bardo, because of just an emotional attachment I had to the story. I love Lincoln, and I loved how Saunders inserted lots of snippets from various different sources. I just struggled reading it, and which also is number 10, the books that made me cry. Like, there was a time where I had to put it down, and I was just crying, and that's just because of something that happened in my life. Not, the book is sad, but not to the extent that I took it, and I'm just a sensitive person. Biggest surprise, I would say, was Margaret the First by Danielle Dutton. I absolutely loved that book, and it is in my top 5 of this year. Like, that would probably be next after the books I already mentioned. I just fell in love with her writing and the character of Margaret the First. After I finished that book, I read as much as I could about Danielle Dutton and watched her on YouTube talk. There's a long discussion she talks about Margaret the First and her process of writing, and I just really enjoyed it. Favorite new author debut or new to me, I will say Danielle Dutton, as I just said, and Megan Marshall for the Peabody Sisters. I'm going to pick up her Margaret Fuller book. Definitely super impressed with those two ladies. Newest fictional crush. So I'm totally going to morph this question. My most favorite character is Fitz from, Robin Hobb's series. He's just my favorite. I love all of his imperfections, and I am just so sad that series is over. My newest favorite character was, it's all the same books here, but Elizabeth Peabody. I mean, she was just brilliant, guys. She's just so instrumental in so much. I cannot say enough about her. I mean, she was brilliant. I am so inspired by her. The other person I kind of thought was an interesting character, and this might be particular to the author's writing about the character, was Nero from Margaret George's The Confessions of Young Nero. I know Nero is not painted the best in history, but how Margaret George writes about him, it actually makes you try and see things from his perspective, and I like him because of the tribulations that he's had to gone through, the weird Oedipus-like relationship he had with his mother, and what he has to do to her to stay in power, and his impact that he had on culture in Rome and everything. There's so much. He is such an interesting character. Number 11 book that made me happy, I picked Used and Rare by Larry and Nancy Goldstone. This made me intrigued about used and rare editions of books, and I already tend to buy used books anyways, but now when I go to a used bookstore, I'm looking for different things that I didn't think of before. It is a short book, and the premise, they start off as a birthday present to each other. They're just sick of spending lots of money on birthday gifts that they were just laying around the house or whatever. So they set the cash limit at $10, and they kind of had a competition who could give who the best birthday gift. And one of them picks a nice edition of War and Peace, and it starts them down this rabbit hole of discovering old editions, collections, bookshops around New England, book shows. I have to read the second book in the series. It just made me so happy, and that was a recommendation by Leslie from Words of a Reader. My favorite book to film adaptation, I have not seen any movies this year, hardly, and none that were from a book, unfortunately. They're whatever. I mean, I've just been reading more, which makes me happy. So The favorite video I've done this year was, I did like a author spotlight on Margaret George, and I just went through all the books that she wrote. I liked having something kind of atypical out of what I normally do, and it's not that I don't like doing these videos, because I do. I like talking about what I'm currently reading, and like talking about that I finished this, and this is what I'm going to read next, and this is what I got at the used bookstore, but it was cool to do something else, and I have another one I want to do for another author, but she hasn't written as many books as Margaret George has. The most beautiful book I've bought or received this year. This is my favorite, The Luminaries. I found this at a used bookstore. I totally got it at a whim, and I'm so glad that I did. I just love the moons and the stars here, and the spine. So I'm going to be buddy reading this with Jess in July, and I cannot wait to get to it. It is about the New Zealand's gold rush. It starts off in 1866. It's a historical fiction. This won the 2013 Man Booker Prize, so I'm excited about that. The book I need to read by the end of year. I don't really need to read anything, which I guess is everybody's, typical answer. There's a lot of books I want to read, and I'm excited to be doing a few buddy reads. I haven't done any of those before. So besides The Luminaries, there's one more, Team of Rivals by Doris Kearns Goodwin. This is the political genius of Abraham Lincoln. I haven't read any Goodwin. I love Abraham Lincoln. So I'm going to do a buddy read with Book Learning